show is in honor of, and as always, it's a show for veterans, about veterans, and for the general public. We want to keep bringing people up to speed as to what's going on in the world of the VA, the world of retired veterans, and we're here to help them in any way possible. Special guest we have with us today is Jay Lawrence. Jay did 2 tours in Iraq.
Yes, sir.
It came back with Purple Heart.
Yes.
Purple Heart, and you were honored for your service, and just recently retired. In a matter of days now, he's only retired. Jay, thank you so much for coming.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Congratulations on a retirement.
Thank you.
Jay, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I grew up in a military family. My dad was a Marine, served 17 years. My biological father was in for 27 years, Sergeant Major. I grew up a lot of my life in California, Southern California, between Camp Pendleton and
We won't
29
hold that
Palms.
against you.
That's okay. I always tell my dad I became more of a man. I went Army instead of Marines. He laughs at me every time I do that, though.
Your rank when you retired?
Sergeant First Class, E7.
E7.
Tomb Sergeant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite a hike up. I'm thinking I retired E4, and E7 was almost unheard of in those days.
Yeah,
Just getting to E5.
You were in the Navy, it would have been
E6,
chief.
yeah. I mean, a lot of guys made E5, and E6 was like, not easy.
No, they tell you, once you hit E7, it takes an act of Congress to knock you down.
Okay, so now you served in California.
Well, my dad served in California.
Oh, that's right. That was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I actually joined the Army right after high school. A lot of people have their own stories why they joined the Army. Mine, I love to tell it when I did my recruiting duty. I tell them, people join for college, people join for service. I joined to get away from my stepmother. Yep.
You had a wicked stepmother.
I did. My brother and sister left me behind, so
Oh, boy.
I was by myself. So
You know what? You're one of many, but at least you got the nerve to say it.
Exactly.
And you're one of many that I think of the guys I served with. How many guys do just running away from their families for whatever reason,
Yeah, my dad, when he got out of the Marines, he was a truck driver, so he was always gone. So I was basically by myself.
Okay.
And
then you did how many years infantry?
Well, I did 12 years in the infantry and 9 years as a recruiter. And then after 21 years of service, I actually retired, which was the 1st of this month.
God bless
Excellent.
you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Enjoy your retirement.
Oh, I'm going
That's what
to.
we're gonna do. Tell me, when you served in Iraq, give us a little background of that, what it was like.
Well, I was actually stationed out of Hawaii at that point, and they took me from paradise and moved me over to the desert.
Right.
That was kind of rough. That was a culture shock.
That's
but-
like going from heaven to hell.
Exactly. And I was with the 127 Infantry Alpha Company. And, basically, I always look at, the service members that served in the past, our Vietnam veteran, World War II veterans, Korean War veterans. And every time I talk to them, I always tell them that they've done things that I couldn't do. For example, when we're over in Iraq, we live on either a forward observing base or an actual base out of there. And we're not living in the jungle days on end, weeks on end,
I lived in a palace.
Yeah.
I lived in one of Saddam's palaces when I was there.
Exactly. I was at Fob McHenry when I was there my first tour.
Right.
And it was a base that was about a mile width in diameter. And, it was just our battalion that lived there. So with us living there, we had to, work out, do everything. We went on patrols. We did QRF. We did everything we had to do off of that fob. And every night, though, we got to sleep in a bed. So every time I see a Vietnam veteran and stuff, they always say, you have it worse because you really didn't know who your enemy was. But with me, if I were in those shoes back then, I'd be crying. I wouldn't be able to do it.
And you know what? You would have done it. You say that. You say you wouldn't have been able to do it, but you would have done it because I'm sure there were a lot of guys in Nam that were crying inside, but when it came down to nuts and bolts, they said, we're going to do this, and they just did it.
Yeah.
They did it. So I'm sure that you would have done it. And, you know, I feel bad for the guys that served in Nam because, like you said, you're sleeping in the jungle.
Exactly.
I mean, you know,
It takes a special kind of man.
as far as knowing who your enemy was, they knew who their enemy was back then, but then again, so did you.
Exactly. Well, the thing with us is we knew who it was, but one thing we experienced over there is a lot of the people that were greeting us in the towns were shooting at us at night.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we've noticed over there. That's what we dealt with a lot. So, you know, it was a special kind of situation.
And I had guys who were Nam that were friends of mine that I was Navy, so I didn't have to see that portion of that, but they had 12-year-old kids shooting at them.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure you had the same thing over in Iraq.
Yeah, we did.
You know, it's not an easy job to do.
No.
So how many years you did? 2 tours over there?
Yep, 2 tours, a total of, I did 13 months the first tour, 15 months the second tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
My tour was 2 years, 2 months, and a day, but who was counting?
I know.
Yeah, he counts it down in the minutes.
Yeah, after 2 years, believe me, you start counting down in minutes.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Yeah, to be over there for that amount of time is just.
And then you came back stateside?
Yes, I went back to Hawaii, and I was there until 2007. So I went from 2004 to 2005, and then 2007 to 2009. And I left 2009 during my second tour in Iraq was when I actually decided to go recruiter afterwards. So I submitted my recruiting packet while I was in Iraq.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, we were talking outside, and you said recruiting was not an easy task.
It's not. One thing you have to look at when you deal with recruiting is you're selling a lifestyle.
Yep.
It's, you know, and the thing is, I didn't even look at it as in selling, and I think that's why I was successful as a recruiter. I looked at it as educating. You know, a lot of people, they went out, talked to these young men and women about come join the Army, come join the Army. And it becomes very stressful because you have your leadership hounding on you because we have to make our yearly quotas, you know, that Congress puts out. So we're catching the heat from higher up, and we need to be able to disseminate what's important, what's not important. You know, you're not going to make your mission every single month you're out there recruiting. Mm-hmm. So the way that I looked at it is, I'm not going to go out there and try to sell these kids the Army. I'm going to go out there, I'm going to educate them, I'm going to let them know how the military, how the Army can help them be successful in life compared to what they're doing now. I'm going to give them their plans. You know, if you decide to go this route in college, this is what it's going to, you know, this is the route you're going to have to take. If you want to go the military route, you have the reserves and you have active duty. These are the 2 routes you can take. So I'm going to lay three avenues of approach on their table, and I'm going to let them really decide which avenue is the best for them.
I think it's also a lot of it is affected by where you live. For example, when I had my reserve command, I was in Western Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And to be perfectly honest, in the 2000s in Western Pennsylvania, there were no jobs.
No.
So you're a young kid coming up, getting out of high school. There weren't a lot of options for you unless you wanted to work for Burger King, McDonald's. I mean, nothing wrong with that, but, you know, that was the type of job that was available. There was no heavy industry of any kind. There weren't any mines. There weren't any factories. So a lot of the soldiers there were coming into my unit, the reserve unit, because there was some opportunity for them to get college and get out of the situation they were in. So in that region, that was a big selling point for the military.
Yeah.
In some other regions, like here in New York City, it may not be as strong of an incentive as something else, like the change in the lifestyle. So to me, I always looked at it as regionalized, and going from there, what appeals to that person who's even thinking about going in. But the other issue that I've seen is that physically, I don't know that there's that great of a pool out there any longer.
No, it's becoming worse than what it used to be. And we have young men and women out there that would make great soldiers, great Marines, great sailors, great airmen. But the thing is, they're so coddled by their parents nowadays that we for example, we had this young man up in Connecticut. His dad served as an MP. His mom was a correctional officer in the military. And they since got out. He was raised more as a civilian than in the military. And young man loved going to the gym. Really great kid. As a future soldier, he was nothing but hoo hoo, let's go do it. First day he got the basic training, he broke down because he's never spent that time away from his mom. And
It's
the
a sad
kids are
state of affairs, but it's true.
yeah, the kids are so coddled nowadays and so spoiled that they don't want to leave home, which is harder for them to be able to do that. And for example, with my job now, I talked to this young man who wanted to be a Marine. And he wanted to join the Marines, And the way that I talked to him is, right now, East Windsor campus up there where I recruit for,
Right.
Lincoln Tech, they have a dorm room.
Right.
And this is an opportunity for you to get away from home, to see what it's like to be away from your family,
Right.
but still close enough to come home if you get homesick
Yep.
before you join the military, to see even if you can tolerate it, you can deal with it.
Let me ask you this, and it may be a loaded question, but did you ever have second thoughts about somebody you recruited and say to yourself after the fact, I wish I hadn't done this, or...
It's funny you say that, because all recruiters do it. When they come on recruiting, they sit there and they say, we're not going to recruit these dirt bags that are going to pollute the Army.
Right.
But then they get here and they feel the pressure, and they will put anybody in the Army.
Okay.
But the way that you have to look at it is, as long as they can pass the ASVAB and they can pass medical, you have to process them. If you don't, you can get in trouble.
Right.
Because if they're
Understandable.
right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that we've put in the Army that I wish have never joined the Army.
Right.
We have these, young men and women that are too smart for their own good. They feel that they talk themselves out of a good deal.
Right.
Because they think too much. They don't go in as officers. They try to go in as listed, and they break down while they're in because they overthink stuff. Mm-hmm. The way that I look at, my best recruits were the ones that scored between a 31 and a 49, a Bravo, and and then were able to, follow directions.
Okay. When you talk about the score 31 to 49, exactly what does that mean for the viewing public?
Yeah, for the ASVAB, you take an ASVAB score, or you
Right.
take an ASVAB test to process into the military period. And for the Army, we can take anybody who scores from a 31 up to a 99 on the ASVAB. Anything between a 31 and a 49 is considered a Bravo. That means you're basically not a quality applicant. I wasn't a quality applicant when I joined. I scored, I think, in like the high 30s, low 40s. Anything over a 50 is considered an alpha. That's a quality applicant. That's what the military, that's what the Army is looking for. They want the quality applicants. But I honestly have to say, my better applicants, my better soldiers that I've, served over, that I've led, that I've guided, that I've mentored, have been people that have scored under a 50.
Did you deal with that same type of scenario?
I did in some respects in that, as from an officer's perspective, and I started enlisted and became an officer. I'm a Mustang. But when I was looking, my biggest shortage when I was commanding, because I commanded a brigade, was in lieutenants. I had almost no lieutenants because in the 2000s, all of the outputs from all of the ROTC programs were going directly into active duty.
Yeah.
Every lieutenant that became a lieutenant was going active duty. There were none coming to the reserves. So I had companies that were being led by or platoons that were being led by sergeant first classes. And I'm sorry, but there's a reason that there's an officer and an enlisted part to this team, and it's supposed to be a team of leadership, and you need both. So what I was doing was I was creating my own by direct commission, and I did 22 lieutenants and 2 warrant officers in 3 years. And I did it by I had 2 people that made the original jump, and I said, okay, your job is to go out and help everybody you think. But when you're looking at those people, you want people with some kind of leadership and some kind of education that can make that jump from the enlisted rank to the officer rank. So you looked at that type of, well, what did they score?
Yeah.
And obviously, not everybody can do it on either side. So you had to look at that. That was just a part of the decision. The other decision part that I looked at was I wanted somebody that had at least gone to the primary leadership school as an enlisted person so that they had some idea of how to lead. And then I used to take them from that platoon and put them in another platoon so they weren't with their buddies, because that's the worst thing you could do.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
all of these things came into the consideration when you were doing it. But lieutenants were my biggest shortage.
Yeah, I know the same problem in civilian life. I mean, with the police department, it was the same thing. You got promoted to sergeant. The first thing to do is they remove you from that precinct
Absolutely.
and put you someplace
Absolutely.
where there's nobody that you could. Because the worst thing that'll happen to you is, and the
buddy.
same with the military, your buddies will actually turn on you.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be the sergeant all of a sudden.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be one of them or not.
It happens in the military
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
I've seen it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but the leadership position is, you can't be best friends with everybody in your platoon
Yeah.
or whatever.
Well, now that you're retired, what are your plans? I know you're doing recruiting up in Lincoln Tech.
Yes.
That's up in Connecticut?
Well, they have they have campuses all over. They have, one of their major campuses is up in Connecticut. It does have a dorm room up there. But they do have an automotive school here in Queens.
Right.
And then there's a couple in New Jersey.
You're going to settle out. And one of the other things I want to talk to you about is somebody in your life named Magda.
Yes, my wife.
Your wife. Now,
Yes.
Magda is familiar with helping military families. Her job is...
She actually works with 8th Medical Brigade. She's the family readiness liaison there. She deals with all the families, preparing them for their spouse going to combat. So she helps the families out. She also helps with the integration of them coming back.
Yep.
That's very important, coming back.
Yes.
There's a
And
lot
that
of...
particular unit is set, a part of them is set to deploy the end of this month.
Yes.
So they're going to be moving out. So there's going to be a group from Staten Island or from this area, because the reserves, the way it works is they can be from all over the place, but they will be deploying to the theater sometime later this month.
And we all know that you leave as one person, you don't come back as the same person.
No, that's...
And there's no putting it back together again.
There isn't. That's one thing my wife's always pointed out to me. Before I left to go to Iraq the first time, I've always had a smile on my face. I've always had I carried myself a specific way. And she said when I came back, I was a completely different person. You know, and I told her, yeah, it's just the way that, it is.
Well, you've seen things that most people haven't seen.
Exactly.
And-
You know, and I often talk with,
Living under the stress also
Yeah.
for that length of, and I'm sorry, but it is stressful.
Yeah.
No matter what your rank is, it's stressful.
Oh, yeah.
People are shooting at you.
Exactly.
and often tell a story. When I left to go into the military, which was the Vietnam time, okay, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. But when I left to go into the military, before I left, I was cruising Richmond Avenue in my car and looking at the pretty girls and what have you. And when I came back, was the whole world had changed. Staten Island had changed. Everything in my life had changed.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure that's for everybody. It's the same. You know, it's,
Well, most cases you've grown up quite a bit. That's one thing that the military does for you. You grow up.
yeah, and you grow up fast because
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've seen your best friends getting killed.
Yeah.
You've seen guys die. You've seen the horror side of the world. You know,
Exactly.
I mean, and you saw an environment where, I mean, those people have no value for human life in some of these countries, and they'll think nothing about blowing somebody up. You know, and we're not used to that. You don't see that in the United
No.
States. You know, I mean, we may dislike each other, we may demonstrate against each other, but we don't go around killing everybody.
No, we don't.
So tell us a little bit more about did you get involved with your wife's work? Do you help her? Or?
Well, I've actually helped her out, volunteered a couple times going over there to prepare stuff for the soldiers. But underneath her program, they have a program called FRG, and that's the Family Group Readiness, or Family Readiness Group, to where usually it's built from volunteers. And that's kind of an internal support for other family members of soldiers. And with the FRG being underneath her program, she actually supports them and helps them out also getting everything together. With me retiring, I actually let her know, because they're going through a chain of command right now, I let her know that if they do need a volunteer for the family readiness, I will volunteer my time. 21 years experience in the Army, I know
Absolutely, yeah.
what's supposed to happen. So I told her if she does, you know, have that opportunity, I will volunteer my time to help her out in that aspect, which will be good because she and I will work hand in hand together, you know, because she oversees that program.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a whole assortment of items that come up when units deploy, when troops deploy. I mean, some of the silliest things happen. An example in my case, I was gone 2 months and my house insurance was canceled.
Yeah.
Now here's my wife over here and it's like, oh, well, I never had to do this before. And, you know, okay. She calls me up and tells me in Iraq, oh, gee, the house insurance got canceled. I said, well, you better go and get another one. I mean,
Exactly.
but having a readiness group, because I deployed as an individual and didn't have one, but having a readiness group, you can talk to somebody else. Well, gee, what kind of insurance do you have? Well, here's an agent's name. That's the simple types of things to take some of that burden off of the family, because your roles change.
Yeah.
I don't think my wife wrote 10 checks before I deployed. When I came back, I had to get the checkbook back from her.
No, exactly.
And it's different roles.
Yeah.
And never had to do that before.
That's what a lot of people don't understand. When you deploy, you're not just coming back a changed person, but your spouse has changed
Yes.
also. They're,
Exactly.
They're more independent.
Yes.
They couldn't depend on you while you were over there. They didn't want to stress you out with the burdens that they were dealing because you were in harm's way. So they found a way to deal with it themselves, and they had to take that lead. So when you come back and you integrate back into that marriage, it's not just her needing to learn the changes that you've made, but you also need to learn the changes that your spouse have had to make.
Yep.
Well, Jay, so let's say a youngster comes up to you, 20 years old, 19 years old, said, Mr. Lawrence, I'm thinking of joining the Army, Marines, whatever.
Well, the recruiter's going to kick in, and I'm going to tell him the Marines no.
Oh, okay. But what would you tell a kid that's coming? He's coming to you looking for advice, and he's saying, "I'm thinking about the military." How do you evaluate how you answer him?
Well, first I would ask him why. Why are you thinking about the military? What is making you make that life-changing experience now? And after I learn what his situation is, I'll be able to guide and mentor him in the right direction. It could be just because he hasn't been able to find work out here, and then I'm going to make him realize the importance of what he's going to deal with in the Army, in the military as a whole. The stress, the demand, the responsibilities you're going to have, the flexibility you're going to need to have, and really see if he can handle it. And then, if anything pans out, I'm always the person that I want to see young men and women better their lives. So I would probably introduce him to a recruiter. I will probably shadow him through his process and assist him in the decisions that he makes because I know the situation that he's going through.
A very good answer. A very good answer. And I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. And I can ask you if you come back sometime and give us an update as to how civilian life is going for you, having left the military. Give it a few months, and we'll come back and we'll talk about that. And I know Paul did well with civilian life when he left, even though he couldn't give orders all the time. He can't even give orders at home. He takes orders at home.
I know. He had to do that complete 360.
Yeah.
All I can
Or
tell you
180.
was when I got promoted to full colonel, my wife said, doesn't really make any difference. I always get one rank above, so
Exactly.
she's
Yeah,
a brigadier general.
You were household 6, she was household 7.
That's it.
But I want to thank you for coming and talking with us. And the little things like this enlighten families that are watching, and whether it's a military family or someone whose children are at that age where they may be considering the military, we'll be able to guide them in the right direction. Well, once again, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And please
Thank you
come
very
back.
much.
Thanks,
Yes.
Jay.
Paul, thank you
very
for bringing Jay down to us.
No problem.
Okay, appreciate it. Paul always does these things. He makes them happen. You're watching In Honor Of, in the control room. Rosemary, Roman, Terry, out here, JR. Guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Goodbye. We love you.